Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about the Dungeons and Dragons community, and we're going to talk about IRL alignment tags. All right. So, the Dungeons and Dragons community, Dungeons and Dragons itself is it is such an incredibly complicated subject, right? And the Dungeons and Dragons community, correspondingly, is incredibly complicated, right? So, I want to talk about three people in the Dungeons and Dragons community today. And I want to talk about IRL alignment tags. Like, where do we where? So alignment is in Dungeons and Dragons, okay? And if you find a Dungeons and Dragons book, you're going to find alignment listed in there, right? Through every single printed book, right? At somewhere, at some level, right? And so one of the things that's really interesting is when you look at people in the Dungeons and Dragons community, where do they line up on the alignment scale, right? Are they in the good bracket, lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good? Are they in the neutral bracket? Are they in the lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral? Or are they in the evil bracket? Are they in the lawful evil, neutral evil, or chaotic evil, right? So let's talk about three people. Let's talk about Matthew Mercer. We're going to talk about me, Scott Garibay. We're going to talk about Venger Satanis, right? So it is my opinion that all three of us are in the Dungeons and Dragons community, right? So Matthew Mercer is very, very complicated. He's quite literally, meets with Wizards of the Coast, Wizards of the Coast executives pretty routinely, actually, right? And on the flip side, he's also could be Dungeons and Dragons' greatest threat if he decides to set up shop and go against Dungeons and Dragons, spin up his own tabletop role-playing game, fantasy game, right? So you have that, right? Then let's talk about specifically. And then myself, right? So I commentate on Dungeons and Dragons, right? Pretty extensive amount of Dungeons and Dragons commentary. Then let's talk last about Venger Satanis. I've been aware of Venger Satanis probably for about 3 or 4 years, and he came on my radar just recently. So I listen to a lot of different commentators, and there's this one commentator who has really good coverage, right? He covers Dungeons and Dragons news. He specifically does tabletop role-playing game news, like here's all the new products this week, right? And just does a great job of doing coverage of what products are coming out. And because Dungeons and Dragons is the largest TTRPG manufacturer in the world by far, a lot of their products will be listed there, right? So this guy, he was doing one of his videos, this D&D commentator, and he said Venger Satanis was recently excluded from the TSR Con, and I was like, wait, what? And he goes, and I don't know if TSR Con is being fair to Venger Satanis. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I remember Venger Satanis being out there. And now, who and what is Venger Satanis? Well, I think he's part of the Dungeons & Dragons community. He's an RPG author. Okay, he has authored multiple RPGs. He does a lot of blogging and commentary on the tabletop fantasy role-playing game space, and because of that, of course, he commentates on Dungeons & Dragons at times, right? And in addition to that, what's his chosen public name? So this isn't his real name. Trust and believe, Venger Satanis is not Venger Satanis's christened name, name he was born with, right? So Venger is the villain from the 1983 to 1986 Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, right? It's spelled exactly the same, right? And so I think he's using that to say, hey, I'm part of Dungeons and Dragons community. And then Satanis is a word that ends with is and is the word Satan, right? Like and so basically I was like, I need to go find out if TSR Con was unfair to Venger Satanis when they excluded him. And then I was like, wait, is that worth 1 minute, even 1 minute of your time? Probably not, right? Like, and the reason why is, TSR Con is like, we're excluding this person, right? Well, the person they're excluding has said, hey, when you think of me, I want you to think of two things. I want you to think of 1983 to 1986 Dungeons and Dragons, and I want you to think of Satan, the guy who lives in hell and stabs people with a pitchfork forever. That's what I want you to attached to my content and me. That's what I want you to think of. I want you to think of Satan when you think of me, right? And I'm like, I don't think I really need to spend even 1 minute determining if it was, appropriate for TSRCon to exclude Satan, Avenger Satanis. Like, exclusion seems like, according to your name, like literally the, you being excluded from things and that making the news would seem like that'd be like part of your brand, right? Like, so I'm like, I'm not going to spend 1 minute seeing what the rest of this story, right? So one of the things is, but it made me think about, where do D&D commentators align according to IRL alignment? Because, if we play Dungeons and Dragons, we know the importance of alignment, right? And we want to connect ourselves to people that are, in my opinion, in the good alignment, right? So let's talk about the three of us, right? And where we come out on the alignment spectrum, right? So I think Matthew Mercer is very clearly on the good alignment, right? There's so many clues of this. So one, he brought forward this game, Vox Machina, and he did everything he could to build it up, and he did everything he could to raise up the banner of Dungeons & Dragons and honor Gary Gygax, whose home he visited with Satine Phoenix. And then he said, hey, that's not enough. Let's give Vox Machina, right? And by extension, almost certainly Mighty Nine and almost certainly Bell's Hells, right, to the world. Like, not just D&D, D&D wonks, right? Let's give it to people who don't even crack the books, and then draw them to Dungeons & Dragons through an animated show. So he created the Vox Machina anime show, right? Animated show. In order to continue to draw people to Dungeons & Dragons, right? And then, and also, he visited Gary Gygax's home with Satine Phoenix, right? Like, and then, in addition to that, like, he gets into this position where he could be Dungeons & Dragons' greatest competitor right now, right? He's a real threat to them, right? So he has this contract for Call to Netherdeep. You know what he does? The moment Call to Netherdeep gets close, he goes right into the WotC Studios with Todd Kenrick, sits down and just does the best possible version you could ever imagine of promoting Dungeons & Dragons and his official Critical Role Dungeons & Dragons book, Call to Netherdeep. Does not withhold in any way, doesn't, semblate or, equivocate, just, like, doesn't do that. He just helps Dungeons & Dragons. I think Matthew Mercer is clearly good aligned, right? Where am I at? I think I'm neutral. I'd love to tell you I'm good aligned, right? But I really want this channel to be about transparency. And I would love to say I'm definitely good aligned, but I'm not positive of that anymore. And the reason why is I really desire to be good aligned, right? But frequently I look at a situation, I look at all the facts, and where I end up on that spectrum of belief and what I believe and what I stand for and what I'm willing to really struggle to make occur, or the things I desire to happen, no one else in the world agrees, right? And I think at the macro level, the world does not end up, most people do not end up in the good alignment, but they desire to be in the good alignment, and their opinions are pointed toward good alignment. And the fact that I continuously look at the facts on the ground for what's happening, and no one, like less than 1% of the world, or literally zero people, agree with me, makes me doubt that I'm actually good aligned. So I think I'm neutral aligned, right? Last, Avenger Satanis. Where is his alignment? Well, I think if you put the word Satan in your name, that's a big clue where you end up in alignment, right? So I think it would be harsh to say I think this person is evil aligned. But I will say this, it is very difficult for me to understand how Avenger Satanis could be neutral aligned or evil, or neutral aligned or good aligned, right? I wouldn't say that Avenger Satanis is an evil person, but I will say this, it is very difficult for me to believe that he is attempting in any way to reach neutral alignment or good alignment, right? And that gives a huge clue of where he would fall, in my opinion, right? And the reason I bring this up is we should connect ourselves to good alignment first, neutral alignment second, and evil alignment last. And we should not ignore clues for where people are in their alignment. And the other thing I think is we should, as people, because we play Dungeons and Dragons and we have this special relationship with alignment and morality that other humans just don't have, right? Because we're called to look at it personally. We need to be honest and look at ourselves and see where we align in the alignment bracket. And I think, just based on recent facts and like the fact that whenever I look at situations, really important situations, right? I almost never come out believing what others believe. And I think generally humans want to be good and they want to go toward that good alignment. And the fact that I'm never in that space really makes me think when I look at myself in the way Gary insisted we do with Dungeons and Dragons, I'm in the neutral alignment, right? And I definitely think Matthew Mercer, especially after seeing Vox Machina and seeing just how he presents himself, is in the good alignment, right? And I am curious what you think. What alignment do you think Venger Satanis lines into? I have a hard time believing that he's aiming to be in the neutral bracket or in the good bracket. That's what I can say, right? But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Also, where do you think you align? Where do you think you fall in the alignment bracket? I'd love to hear. Also, I definitely think I'm neutral. I think I'm lawful neutral. I think that's where I land. Where do you land? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.